Hi everyone, this is Jenny Smith with the Module 8 poster session. So my philosophy of online teaching would be, I believe as a teacher I play a small but crucial role in my students' time in my class. I know that a learning environment should be supportive of students to grow physically, mentally, socially, and emotionally. I want my students to feel comfortable with their peers and know that they are able to share their ideas and take risks. I also believe that in order to keep students engaged in an online classroom, a teacher needs to use multiple modes of communication and collaboration techniques. So I said that I play a small but crucial role in my students' time in my class because for online teaching, you're basically facilitating the lesson and making sure that everything's going correctly and that they're learning, but they're mostly doing all of the work. So that's why I said that. Next, integrating synchronous tools. I don't use many synchronous tools to begin with in my class because I have younger students and I really just need to be there for them. If I would use a synchronous tool, it would kind of be pointless in a way to really have them be on a tool that I can communicate with them from across the room. So that's just that's just my thinking on this. But I think that a synchronous tool would be really good if my students had to do homework outside of class. And it'd be like something that's difficult for them to work on at home by themselves, or if their parents can't help them with something. I think that a synchronous tool would be great, so that you can communicate after school hours, and there'd maybe be like a window time frame that the teacher could be open to communicate with students and their parents about problems that they're having with homework. But in my classroom right now, using a synchronous tool is not really useful. I do use synchronous tools with parents. I text them throughout the day if there's any problems with their students, like, hey, did you know if they brought their homework in? Or have you seen this library book? Things like that. Also, did you mean to send a Diet Coke with your student today because we're not supposed to have soda at school? And that happened the other day. So I use synchronous tools with my parents in that way, but not my students as much. Integrating asynchronous tools. I use asynchronous tools every single day. I use Seesaw to have students complete activities and submit them online. They can also watch videos and respond to them if I would like them to. So I really like using Seesaw. It's a tool that I let my students have at it. They can go and do it by themselves, and then I can check on it later. It's kind of like just doing a worksheet, but online, and it's all in one spot, but it's easier to organize and take care of, and it's not piling up in a pile. It's just notifications on my phone on an app. So I use it every single day. I'd like to use it more often. I mean, I use it every day, but I only use it for math. I'd like to use it more for reading and writing. And I want them to be more motivated and engaged in their learning. So I think that sometimes if I add more of these asynchronous tools like Seesaw, they'd be a little more motivated. It's fun to record yourself reading a passage. It's fun to write with your finger on the iPad and write what you like, or type it out even. I haven't had them do that yet, but I think that if I would use it more for other things other than math, I think my students could be a little bit more motivated and engaged in their learning. And integrating collaborative tools. I would like to use more collaborative tools in my classroom. Finding one that works for first graders might be a challenge. I think I'll start with a pre-made Google Slides PowerPoint, and I'll discuss with students how to use them and how to make them work, and maybe just let them play with it for a while to figure out different tools and things that they can use. Again, these are just first graders, so maybe the text box feature and changing the font would really be the beginning, and then maybe adding pictures would be next. An activity I would do would be learning about animals. So I'd give a group of maybe 2 or 3 students a topic. So I was thinking an animal, and they'd be assigned the animal to write about. One student could do habitat, another student could do how an animal looks, and the last student could do the diet of the animal. And each of the slides would be for each of those things, but the entire PowerPoint would be about one animal. So they'd be able to add information about each of those specific content areas to the slides. And then I could even, if I had lower students that have a harder time with this, I could pair them up with and do 2 per slide instead of just 1. And maybe one can find the information, another one can type it up, vice versa, things like that. Using online learning for differentiation. Seesaw has the ability to have teacher assign work to any students. So I can assign a worksheet or a reading passage or a math work for all my students. I can assign it for one student. I can assign it for small groups of students that I've already pre-made on Seesaw. So I'm able to pass that out to my students and do different activities for each group. So I can have a high, low, high, middle, and a low group and have them each be doing different activities, but at the same time. What else? Yep, then I also use a Seesaw to help me decide if differentiation is needed for my students. Some questions that I still have is I still wonder about motivating students to do their work, especially for the older students. I feel that students that don't have a social aspect in class could find it harder to be motivated. After a longer period of time away from their peers, I feel like a lot of students that go into cyber school are like, get me out of this high school or get me out of this middle school because I'm not comfortable with the people around me. But after a while, I feel like it could get lonely and you kind of lose the motivation to do things because there's not people around you to help support you or to see what you're doing, things like that. You're kind of by yourself. So I just wonder how some teachers motivate their students to do their work. One aha that I have is that I'm able to be one-on-one with my students in a way with asynchronous tools. I can have them record their thoughts or ways that they solved a problem with their thinking while drawing it or while typing it out. And I can understand what they're talking about or how they solved the problem or where they went wrong or where they went right without actually having to sit with each of my students. This can all be done at once, and it saves the class a lot of time by me not having to sit with each and every one of them while students are doing something else in the classroom. I have to keep them busy so I can have one-on-one time with each of my students. So online teaching really can help save some time in that way, that you can have students all be doing one thing at one time on iPads or laptops, doing the same thing and submit it. And you have a recording, you have a recording of their voice, you have a recording of their writing possibly, you have an explanation for everything that they did instead of just handwritten on paper. And then you have to go back and say, well, what were you thinking about this? Because it's not exactly right, but you can talk to them about it that way. But if you do it online, you don't have to waste that time in class to always sit with each and every one of them.